Welcome to episode 112 of OTD, your daily dose of soccer history by 17 Lost Guy. It's February 20, 1986. We're in Milan. Look up, because in the memory of this club, the new era doesn't arrive quietly through a boardroom door. It arrives from the sky. Helicopters over the Arena Civica, Wagner blaring through the speakers, and a new owner turning a football takeover into a live show. That's not just Italian flair. That's a warning shot. AC Milan are about to stop being merely a football club and start behaving like a global entertainment brand, decades before football learns the language we now take for granted: marketing, monetization, primetime, content, superstar management, and the idea that a club can be a political megaphone as much as a sporting institution. But before the helicopters, there's a crisis, and before the spectacle, there's a rescue, and before the trophies, there's a club that is, quite literally, in danger of going under. Because of this day, in 1986, Milan are not kings of Europe. They are a fallen aristocrat, a giant with a dented crown, a club that had been knocked down by scandal, by relegation, by the kind of financial reality that doesn't care about history. And then, Silvio Berlusconi buys them. But how did we get here? To understand the shock of that headline in 1986, you have to feel what Italian football is becoming. For years after the 1960s, after the humiliations on the international stage, Italian football turns inward. The borders close. Foreigners are banned. And then, in 1980, the gates reopen again. And when they do, Serie A doesn't just invite talent, it invites celebrity. It invites the world. And at the same time, Italy itself is changing. Television is changing. Advertising is changing. Politics is changing. Or at least, it's about to be ripped up and rewritten. And in the middle of that transformation is one man who understands something earlier than almost everyone else. Attention is power. Berlusconi builds an empire by selling attention, first through real estate, then through commercial television, then through media. He's not just a businessman, he's a producer. He thinks in audiences, he thinks in narratives, he thinks in showtime. And football, especially football in Italy, is the ultimate attention machine. Now zoom back to AC Milan in the early 1980s. This is not the Milan of Rivera's elegance and European Cups. This is Milan in freefall. They're hit by scandal. They're relegated. They return. They fall again. And by the mid-80s, the club is suffocating financially. Debts pile up. The ownership is unstable. The institution is wobbling. And this is the part of the story that's easy to forget now, because we remember the gold. But in 1986, Milan's brand is a distressed asset, a legendary name, yes, but a club that is bleeding. And that's where Berlusconi arrives with the most important thing in football: money, certainty, and a vision that is bigger than the pitch. But February 20, 1986, Berlusconi, through Fininvest, buys AC Milan. He doesn't just take the keys, he pays the debts, he stabilizes the club, he saves it from the edge. It's a takeover, yes, but it's also an intervention. And here's what makes it feel like an earthquake in 1986. This isn't an old industrial family quietly taking control. This isn't a local patron doing civic duty. No, this is a modern media tycoon taking ownership of a sleeping giant and telling the world with a straight face that he's going to build the best team on the planet. And then he does what he always does. He stages it. And a few months later, the symbolism becomes almost too perfect. The helicopters, the music, the public unveiling. He doesn't merely announce himself as president of Milan. He performs the role. He turns football governance into theater. And he tells supporters, sponsors, rivals, journalists, and politicians the same message in a single production. Milan is back. And Milan is going to be seen. And from there, the machine starts. Because Berlusconi's true impact isn't only that he spends, it's how he builds. He professionalizes, he centralizes, he modernizes. He puts serious executives in place. He installs a corporate spine. And he treats the club like a project with a measurable output. And the output is winning, yes, but it's also visibility, prestige, and leverage. And then comes the football decisions that turn the rescue into a dynasty. He backs big ideas. He hires thinkers. He bets on a new kind of football, aggressive, organized, modern. Arrigo Sacchi, a manager who looks like heresy in a country that has long worshipped caution. Sacchi brings pressing, collective movement, a high line, choreography. Milan stop being a club that hopes to win. They become a system designed to win. And then the signings arrive like declarations. Gullit, Van Basten, Rijkaard, not just great players, global icons, faces that sell the club as much as they strengthen it. Milan become an argument that the future belongs to clubs that can combine football excellence with media reach, financial muscle, and brand control. And they start collecting trophies the way modern superclubs do, not as miracles, but as expectations. The late 80s and early 90s, Milan are European royalty again. They win, they dominate, they intimidate. They don't just lift cups, they define what elite looks like. When Fabio Capello takes over, the machine becomes even colder, more efficient, more ruthless. Milan go unbeaten for an eternity. They crush opponents with the bored confidence of a club that believes history is something they manufacture. This is not a normal football era. This is Milan as a statement. And the numbers, when you step back, are staggering. Under Berlusconi's ownership, Milan win a mountain of silverware, league titles, European Cups, world titles. The club becomes one of the defining institutions of modern football. But the real so what is bigger than Milan. Because Berlusconi doesn't just only change a club, he changes the ecosystem around it. Italian football in the 80s and 90s becomes the center of the sport's gravitational field. Stars come to Serie A. Money follows the stars. Broadcasting follows the money. And Berlusconi sits at a strange crossroads because he isn't only a club owner, he's a media power with direct interest in what football becomes on television. He understands that football's future is not just gate receipts and local loyalty. It's broadcasting, it's sponsorship, it's packaged spectacle. It's the Champions League as a weekly television product, not merely a knockout tournament for purists. And right on cue, Europe changes too. The old European club evolves. Group stages appear. Centralized marketing becomes the model. The Champions League is reborn, with branding, an anthem, a format designed for television, the kind of predictable elite matchups that drive global audiences. This isn't just UEFA. This is football catching up to the logic that Berlusconi already lives by. Make it bigger, make it louder, make it weekly, and make it sellable. Now add the final layer, the one that makes the Berlusconi story uniquely Italian: politics. In the early 1990s, corruption scandals obliterate the established political order. A vacuum appears. Berlusconi walks into it like a man stepping on stage. He founds a party. He campaigns like a broadcaster. He sells himself like a brand. And by then, he has already spent years practicing in the most emotional stadium of them all, football. Because club ownership isn't only influence, it's intimacy, it's identity, it's belonging. When your club wins, you feel it in your chest. And when the owner tells you he's the reason it's winning, he isn't just asking for applause. He's building a relationship with millions. Which is why Berlusconi's Milan era becomes so controversial and so instructive at the same time. It shows the power of football in public life. It shows how a club can be a megaphone. And it shows how blurred the lines can get when media, sport, and politics fuse into one man's personal platform. And eventually, every era ends. Milan, like Serie A itself, struggled to keep pace with the new century's economic reality. The Premier League's television machine, the shift in global revenue, new financial rules, new ownership models, new superpowers. The Berlusconi model, so dominant in the 90s, becomes harder to sustain as the landscape changes. And in 2017, he sells Milan. The club enters the modern carousel of global capital, consortiums, financing, funds, restructurings, the very world Berlusconi helped foreshadow. But where does that leave the story 40 years on? And here's the paradox. You can argue about Berlusconi's politics forever. You can debate the ethics of his influence forever. But in football terms, his Milan is one of the clearest before and after lines the sport has. Before Berlusconi, a great club with a great past, struggling in a chaotic local pre-global game. And after Berlusconi, a super club prototype, trophies, branding, television logic, and global scale. And that's why February 20, 1986 matters. Because it's not only the day Milan changed owners, it's one of the days football changed vocabulary. This is the point where the modern game starts speaking fluent media. 3 things to take away from February 20, 1986. First, greatness is not always born from triumph. Sometimes it's born from bailout. Milan's dynasty begins because the club is rescued before it can rise. And second, Berlusconi doesn't just invest in players. He invests in the idea that football is a product, a show in a global language. Once the genie is out, the sport never goes back. And third, the 1980s and 90s prove how tightly football, television, and power can intertwine, and how quickly winning can turn into influence far beyond the pitch. On this day in 1986, AC Milan were drowning in debt and drifting in the shadows of their own history, and Silvio Berlusconi bought them, turned football into primetime theater, sealed the league in the fallen giant, and helped sketch the blueprint of the modern super club. That's all for episode 112 of OTD, your daily dose of soccer history by 17 Lost Guy. Before we close, a teaser, because tomorrow we jump from helicopters in the European nights to a single FA Cup goal that detonates a rebuild. Episode 113 is February 21, 1970. Watford 1, Liverpool 0, an upset that helped convince Berlusconi to break apart his great 60s side and build the Liverpool of the 70s. One loss, one decision, one dynasty loading its next chapter. If you enjoyed this podcast, please help it climb the charts by rating it, sharing it with friends, give it 5 stars. It really helps. And if you have a great idea for the show, email me at otd@17lawsguy.com. Several episodes have come to me this way, and I'd be happy to research your story for the show. See you tomorrow.